Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are going to continue casting our game of Dominions 5, and I'm joined by Sy.
Hi, I'm Sy, and I like talking about Dominions.
All right. It is turn 7 in this Hydra game where the players are playing 2 by 2, or in at least one case, 3 by 3, controlling one nation. And we have some messages. One from Joman. Bummer about that expansion party. Luckily, the prophet lives on. He had kind of strangely, he'd left one of his expansion parties kind of without the cavalry, and it kind of suffered, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was the one where he had actually moved part of his party up
Mm-hmm.
to, like, from his cap in order to collect the people that he'd left behind, and then he
Yeah.
moved the partial party down, and it did not work.
All right. 3 messages from Bogarus. Steel Evans, let's go. Yeah, so we had seen this site before because that's a site that sort of doesn't need to be site searched, but they just realized that the province they took has the Steel Evans, which was an amazing site.
Yeah, and it's actually just an amazing province in general because
Mm-hmm.
the Steel Ovens are going to be providing an immense amount of resources, and of course they're going to want to have that forted in order to start taking advantage of the construction bonus. But even aside from that, this is a high population farm province, so its
Mm-hmm.
income is going to be incredible. And usually the only downside of these farm provinces is the lack of resources, and the Steel Ovens more than makes up for that.
Yeah, for sure. So it looks like um, so this is Bogarus, which is Lucid and Grippa, and they've been busy on the Diplo front. So it looks like their general, a big part of their plan is going to be recruiting all these indie crossbows. And it looks like they have a nap with Caelum. They've agreed to borders with Midgard. And things seem to be quiet on the Raga front too. And so they are leaning towards attacking Atlantis first. Apparently, I guess the players that are playing Atlantis are on Lucid's grudge list.
Yeah, I don't
I don't.
really like seeing that sort of thing being part of the decision-making process for who they're going to fight.
Yeah.
But it's their
I
decision to make in the
I,
end.
I, the way I'm reading this and the way I guess I've played with Lucid a lot is I think this is like an added bonus, right? I think
Yeah,
he, I think he's expecting aggression that way, and he feels this is a good matchup, and he's like, well, as an added bonus, I get to take on these guys. But we we can talk about this matchup a little bit because early on, so Bogarus has a bit of a greedy build, and it could have been very vulnerable to Caelum, but that seems to have been dealt with diplomatically.
right. Yeah, and then Atlantis seems to be still investing really heavily into these mournfuls.
Mm-hmm.
So the usual advantage that it has over Bogarus is that since both of them like the cold, their ice armored infantry becomes just incredibly durable.
Mm-hmm.
So while the smite mages can help, the fact that their infantry, like outside of that quasi mage matchup of the Holy Threes
Mm-hmm.
would just destroy Bogarus's armies is no longer quite going to be the case, just because Atlantis hasn't massed the same like quantity of their elite troops.
Mm-hmm.
They do have one fort under construction here in 173, but it's already turned 7. So starting the first fort now is, or I guess they would have started at turn 6, is I guess it's about okay, but for an away god, it's not impressive by any means.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is basically going to be, if they like start fighting, I still think that Atlantis should have the advantage. But knowing the diplomacy that went into setting up his other borders, I would suspect that the Bogarus team is going to be able to call on some support.
Well, they
Um,
meant yeah, they actually mention that that possibly Tianchi and even Phlegra might be interested, might collaborate with this.
well, Phlegra is not
But
really in a
exactly. I
position.
mean, well, yeah, that's what Bogarus thinks, but Bogarus might not know about Phlegra's situation. Um, so, but yeah, but like as a matchup, um, I guess if you went for the eparchs, like I guess the thing about Atlantis, I mean, Atlantis is a very strong LA nation, and it has great troops in cold, especially. But its real power spike comes when it gets those like Research 6, Research 7 targets, right? Whether it's Wailing Winds or Stygian Rains or things like that.
Well, while those are very valuable goals, and like
Mhm.
once you hit them, you can definitely do a lot. Um, I think that Atlantis's advantage essentially does come down to the troops.
Mhm.
Like its troops have great synergy with all of these different spells that it can do, and it has some really effective, like kind of late middle game magic for battlefield wide effects. Mostly it wins just because pound for pound, Atlanteans hit harder than the people they're fighting.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then Bogarus is almost the opposite situation. It has incredibly good magic, and it has
Mhm. Oh, looks like you cut off there.
oh,
Oh,
sorry.
okay, you're back. Yeah.
It has incredibly good ramping, so it actually hits its research goals faster, so
Mhm.
it can start actually deploying that magic very quickly. Um, but in the very early game, its weakness is just that their troops are bad. So
Yeah.
in a matchup where it's going to be Bogarushan troops fighting Atlantean troops, especially in Cold 3, you really have to give the advantage to Atlantis, assuming they actually get their ice armored warriors. Um,
Except the Ice Armored Warriors are still only 10 MR, so if you can't discount like the 10 eparchs or whatever that you would bring along with that, right? Because that's a thing that
sure,
you would have in that early war.
absolutely, but like the critical mass of eparchs that
Mm-hmm.
you'd need to beat like a prod 3 await god Atlantean army is just very high. Like you just need a huge number of smites compared to the number of infantry that you're fighting.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
even then, it essentially only works defensively, where you can actually get enough stuff in the way that you can like reliably kill the Atlanteans with that smite spam.
Right, like with a big
If
PD dump or something like that.
Yeah, with
Mm-hmm.
what they have now, I actually think it's a lot closer,
Mm-hmm.
but that's mostly just because like Atlantis doesn't have that critical mass of troops yet. Like you really want to see like, 60, 80 of the ice guys. Um, and for one reason or another, they just don't have that yet.
Yeah. So we'll take. I guess we'll take. Let's take a look once we get to Atlantis at their situation in terms of their troops, and we'll get a better feel for where they're at. But okay, I think that's no. There was one more message from Bugaroos where he says the construction bonus will be nice, but they're not going to be focusing on item construction this early.
Right, and that kind of makes sense too.
Okay, so let's go around and see. Really, honestly, by now it's turn 7, so I'd be curious to see who is taking 3 provinces this turn, right? Which would be sort of, I would say by turn 7 that like if you have done everything perfectly and your nation isn't bad, like some nations just struggle, but like you should be able to do 3 expansions on turn 7, but not always. Sometimes, even optimal play, you might only be doing 2 a turn if the geography was bad, right? And you had to backtrack or whatever, right? If you have a strange build. But I'm
That
definitely looking at 2 or
seems
3, right?
Well, this is LA, so I
Mm-hmm.
think that 2 is okay
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
still.
fair, right? Because it's like
Um,
crossbows, it could be nasty.
Yeah, the reason that I say that is just that even nations that expand well can, depending on the indie matchups, just take a fair amount of attrition,
Yep.
such that even though they like are reliably producing something that's like an expansion party or 3/4 of a reliable expansion party every turn, even by this point they might have just lost some stuff from
Yeah.
the stuff that they sent out already, such that they would only be able to do two. I think that like three would be like
For
great,
yeah,
like it
3 is
would be
like
awesome to be
great,
good.
and 2
Yeah,
is like what you should be aiming for at least, I think.
I think two is the expectation.
So here, Arco is going here with an elephant, and probably by now he has buffs, right?
I should hope so.
Well, he might have, but they're still doing animate skeleton.
Oh, okay. Well,
But
he's got
honestly,
personal luck, so we know that that kind of gives us a gauge for what their alteration level's at.
yeah. So this
So
elephant was
they're,
a
they're
little brave, but he's actually super brave because he's in a group with 4 phalangites with 13 morale. Honestly, the animate skeletons he's been doing all game have actually done really well in these expansion battles because they tend to tie up one of the melee squads.
yeah, they're not useless.
All right, now
I
maybe
mean,
this you had buffs. Let's see.
No, it's still the same.
Personnel. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, we were probably just one more turn away from protection, I suppose.
All right. And the War Shamblers still doing work.
Yeah, like, you can say that Arco has 3 expansion parties, but does he really?
I
mean,
mean,
one of
he
these is the
made the correct
mercenaries.
decision of spending all his money on these turn one, and nobody else did. So
Very, very fair,
yeah.
yes.
All right. So that's Arco. Moving left to Midgard, we see that they have one party of 6 vans, now 5, and then one party of 9 vans here, taking out crossbows and heavy cav. Now, unfortunately, he is boxed out to the north and to the west by Patala and by Caelum.
Yeah.
To the east by Arco.
I think that part of his problem is that, like, just coincidentally people expanded towards him.
Yeah,
But mostly it's just that slow start.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are some of these that, like, there's no reason that he shouldn't have already had by the time these people got there.
Now, these 3 are for sure hit. Like he negotiated borders with Bogarus. Considering Bogarus has taken these 2, I can only assume that means this one has been negotiated to Midgard. So I wouldn't be surprised if, these 3 are his. Arco's not going to come here, so he's going to get these 4. I would bet that he negotiated with Bogarus that he would get this one. I mean, it's possible Bogarus was kind of able to bully him into saying, "I'll take all 3," but that's like unlikely, right? Because Bogarus wants peace with Midgard, right? He wants like 3 friends and 1 enemy, right?
He doesn't want to get elfed.
Exactly. So Bogarus, even though like he's in a power position, he could definitely claim to take this, right? If he sees that Midgard is so small, but you could just give this up. It's hard to reach. Actually, it's like super hard to reach from his cap, right? It's like 3 away because of these mountains.
Yeah,
so
it's a little awkward for both of them. But
well, it's only 2
even
for
even if you're correct about Midgard getting all of those territories, he still has what, 10 provinces? 11?
Yeah, that's gonna be. Let's see, 1, 2, 3,
11,
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This one unclear, right? Could go to
his cap.
Arco.
His cap is 11.
Yeah, the cap is 11, and then this one, he could definitely. Well, the problem is this is like slow to get to, but he could get to it. He might not know that it's still available.
Yeah, it's at least 3 turns away.
Anyway, so Midgard, a little small. Does he have a fort under construction?
No.
No, he wouldn't, right? Okay.
Yeah, I also
Actually, I didn't check. Does Arco have a fort under construction? I don't see one.
Yeah, I don't think that he would either. But yeah, the interesting thing about Midgard is that it's typically a nation that I associate with really strong expansion. So I don't think that Midgard is bad late by any means. And it actually does research really well too, just based on the fact that Galdermen have such high RP. Well, they're kind of like expensive, so Volva definitely do like more research per gold. But
per
Galdermen
unit
can
time, the Galdermen are doing more.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so if they need to like play catch up, they kind of can. Like, it's a really versatile nation, so I don't think that being small is a death sentence. It's just a lot harder to play from behind than it is from a prodigious size, which is what you'd expect with these elf cavalry.
Okay, now ignoring the diplo that we know has happened so far between these 2, if you're Midgard and your 4 neighbors are Arco, Caelum, Patala, and Bogarus, who would you? And we're a bit behind, but let's say it was just an average start. What matchup do you like in terms of who would you like to elf out of those 4 nations?
I think that it depends a bit on your bless. With larger, I think that Caelum is actually a pretty decent target. Normally, the weakness of your elves against Caelum is Earthmeld.
Mm-hmm.
because that's just incredibly powerful and it doesn't have friendly fire. And while elf mages or while the bird mages aren't going to be like they do actually need to get in range to cast it,
Mm-hmm.
by just doing like an attack with your regular troops and then having your wizards do advance and cast behind them, you can actually pretty reliably get into Earthmeld range, and then that completely shuts down normal vans.
Mm-hmm.
Vans that are larger are actually a lot more resistant to Earthmeld, though, both because there's fewer of them in each AoE, and also
Mm-hmm.
because they get that extra strength from the larger bonus.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, like, with that bless in particular, it's actually a pretty decent matchup because in troop versus troop, your cavalry is just going to win every time.
Yeah.
And similarly, the Einhir are ridiculously good against elves, or not elves, birds,
Birds. Yeah.
because it's almost in the opposite sense that they just have that massive attack density advantage, and because they're protection-based tanks, they don't get like destroyed in the alpha strike, and then they go berserk, and then they start hacking away.
For
So I
sure.
think
Yeah.
that, like, yeah, if you can nullify the meld and other disabling spells that Caelum can do, which the larger bless definitely can help with,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very favorable matchup.
All right. Well, we'll see what they choose to do.
To be honest, I
Yeah.
don't expect them to go to war early at all, though.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically just based on the fact that they're small and they know it. It's going to take them, like, another 3 turns to clear indies. During that time, they're still going to be building up their elves, and then they're going to start building infrastructure. And I think that they're going to look at that and be like, okay, well, we can't fight anyone right now. Because, like, by the time that they're finished doing that, then they're just going to be uh, like everyone else is basically going to have gotten forts up, start getting their magic going, and so on. So I think that what they're going to need to do is actually look to vulture, like just join in on someone else's
Join on a
war and take
war.
a province or two. Yeah,
If you were Midgard and you felt you had to go to war early, like quote unquote early, right? Let's say like year 2-ish. What would be your research
you mean like
targets?
turn 12-ish?
No, I meant more like like 2 years into game, like turn 20, between turn 12 and 24, like after expansion, right? Once expansion is done, let's say you're looking that a war is inevitable. What are you? What are like besides?
It's
Is it
very
only going to
matchup
be a
dependent.
bless, or are you going
Yeah,
to try
so
to bring mages?
it's very matchup dependent. The
Mm-hmm.
last time I played Midgard, I had to fight Raga early, so my early research was alt 3 for luck and thaumaturgy
Mm-hmm.
for paralyze, but
Yeah,
that's because I was, if you're
fighting.
fighting
Yeah,
Raga and they have
Zayden's.
a
Yeah.
larger and shock resist, they didn't have exactly the same bless as Raga,
Mm-hmm.
but it was actually quite similar in that it had both larger and shock resistance, so they're functionally immune to air elementals. So when you're up against that, you can't use your traditional Galderman magic, so you have to
Mm-hmm.
lean more into the astral stuff that you get off Volvas. Against these neighbors, um,
A lot of these neighbors kind of share the a lot of small chaffy troops kind of
yeah, yeah, against
style,
these
right?
neighbors, I think, yeah, air elementals are supreme.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the way that the air elemental targeting works, they're going to preferentially go for low protection squares. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have something like Bogarus where they want to put their eparchs inside of like a little hug box with like archers and so on, then those guys are going to get squished pretty reliably.
Mm-hmm.
And along the same time, Patala, they can definitely buff Ethereal, which is quite good against elementals because it's one of the few ways of mitigating trample damage. Um, but their troops, or the larger ape troops and the Nagas, both have very poor defense.
Mm-hmm.
So when the air elementals go start stomping them, then they just get destroyed. And then along the same lines, because the air elementals are targeting for maximum damage, they're going to preferentially go for the lower H or the lower protection and higher like number per square Atavi.
Mm-hmm.
So Patala's going to have a real hard time protecting its mages, if they were to go up into like a mass air elemental type thing. And then the other thing that elementals in general are quite good at is just that they let you spend gems, which sounds a little silly, but they give you like a means of like effectively
Yeah.
converting your gem treasury to combat power, which isn't something that everyone's going to be able to do at this phase of the game.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, well, speaking of Patala, Patala has expanded once this turn, just taking out a heavy calf province here. It looks like they've brought some Naga warriors to the party.
It's actually a pretty good expansion, given how little they lost taking out Heavy Cav.
Yeah, here.
That wasn't like the biggest Heavy Cav province, but it's still kind of cool to see monkeys doing what they're
Well, yeah,
supposed to.
exactly. Oh, well, and this is actually really good because they have like little Atavis in front, and then they have the Sacreds with their Hypnotize just paralyzing the heavy cav.
Yeah, this
Very
time,
cool.
this time the guy who got petrified at least wasn't starting to tank for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
One of the kind of funny things that even though the Nagas there were scripted to attack, once their script ends, then they basically default to fire the same way that Javelin troops do. So they're actually
Yeah.
just sitting there using their poison spit
The
on the
poison
crossbows.
spit, yeah. Which is unfortunate. Alright, so 6 rounds later, they'll finally die from poison.
Yeah, I mean, poison spit is pretty good if you're fighting like a super elite, super high protection unit,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
not so useful against indie crossbows.
So it looks like now. Remember, Bandar Log was slowed down by losing their awake expander, but otherwise their expansion moves have been pretty good. Here they have a lot of freedom to go wherever they want, and it looks like they're recruiting Bakamona shows, and they move some Bandar warriors. So I expect next turn this is going to go south here.
Yeah, and then given the number of Bakamona they have, they can pretty easily clear that whole area. So
With
depending
this
on
party,
how their
yeah.
negotiations with Raga went, they
Mm-hmm.
can go either east or west.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
either of those are very viable. Um, the question though is, does he know how small Raga is? Because normally when you like know that you neighbor Raga, you assume that they'll have snapped up all of that.
Yeah, and also you tiptoe like you're expecting, unless you've opened Diplo with them, you would kind of expect at any moment a pile of Zaidans to come and take these, right? And you don't want to bump that.
Right, because if you bump that and you don't have Nagas in the party, they
Mm-hmm.
just die.
Yeah. Um, so we'll see next turn where he decides to move. Um, Vadiheim is also gobbling up territory to his east now, and is actually. Well, let's see how many. Yeah, very few losses here. Oh, he's got the Rimvedi. Let's take a look. I think this is the first time we're seeing these in action.
Yeah, we did see that he had started recruiting them
Mm-hmm.
in the late fall, just in
Oh,
preparation for those cold scales to kick in.
let me just. Okay, so this province actually doesn't have any cold scales yet, um, but so these are the Rimvedi without the coal. Let's just take a look. So as a reminder, his bless is a lot of resistances, defense 2, strength 2, dark vision. So they're pretty like they still have 17 defense and currently 14 protection, but they have ice protection too. So pretty good stats all around, and there's of course 6 per square.
Yeah, these guys also have cold power, so they're even more
Mm-hmm.
dependent on the temperature than like your usual ice protection guys, like
Yeah.
Atlantis and so on.
Is it
Like,
cold power 1, or is that does that even scale? Yeah, it's cold
yeah,
power
it's cold
1.
power one.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so in Cold 3, you're looking at an additional +3 attack, defense, and strength.
Mm-hmm.
Of those, the defense is, of course, really high priority just for like keeping your stuff alive. But
Yeah,
when you're that small and your base strength is quite low, the +3 strength from the cold power is also really significant. It makes
for
these
sure.
things hit a lot harder than you'd expect for how small they are.
Yep. Okay. Vadiheim is in a good position here to keep pushing east, and that's definitely going to come in and take up some of the real estate that Patala might have hoped to get. All right, and that concludes this row. Scooting.
So
Oh, go ahead.
actually, we were going to talk about like early war targets, or
Mm-hmm.
I guess we had been talking about early war targets for like
Yeah.
some of the other nations. So Vadiheim is definitely a nation that can also take an early war.
Yeah.
And essentially, what you need to watch out for is if to basically just having a first target that can't spam elementals at you, because that's what's really going to ruin Vadi before you can get your point buffs up. Until you have like ethereal and luck, then those sorts of AOE recurring attacks are really dangerous.
Now, what
Um,
about? Sorry to interrupt, but given the Vedi, uh, the Rim Vedi's bless, where they're going to have like a ton of defense and they have super high resistances, are they still that vulnerable to elementals? Because they're going to mow down the elementals like with pretty fast.
Against ice and earth elementals, yeah, because like any time that they like have something going in the square, all of them need to roll. If they ever fail one of those trample defense rolls, they just die. They get multiple rolls per round because the Trampler squishing 2 squares, and then even when they succeed in the defense roll, they still lose 1 hit point out of their 10. So it's still pretty impactful, especially because if you're like invading someone, then when you're like sieging their cap, they have no reason not to just dump their whole treasury on it. Even size 3 elementals can be a little bit dangerous, but mostly it's the size 6 that you need to worry about. Size 3s you can at least kill quickly enough that they're not threatening. Ironically, normally size 3 fire elementals are the most effective, but because they have resistance in their blessed, they actually aren't.
Yeah, that's not going to work so well.
Yeah, so I would say actually Patala would be an okay matchup if you're fighting in heat, which Patala presumably took. Just because they wouldn't be able to summon the earth elementals, they can do only or they wouldn't be able to summon ice elementals because they would just be water, which is a lot less dangerous. Normally it's the other way around, so it's one of those weird, backwards things. But the Batalan Sacreds are very much non-threatening to Vedi Berserkers or Rim Vedi, because that Hypnotize attack, which is really dangerous against individual elites like Griffins, is not quite as threatening when you have 6 guys per square to tank it.
Yeah, for sure.
The elephants that they can do can actually be a little scary, but you also can like bring in some of your own mages to answer that. But that's more of like a, as you were saying, like turn 20-ish thing. So I think it's okay to put Patala for later. Like, don't worry about fighting them for now. Arcocephale has perhaps the most dangerous elephants. Well, in this case, he's going for this interesting Bless build and the Heart Companions. Normally, Arco expands with those elephants, and then they use their early magic to put like Body Ethereal and stuff on them in order to make the elephants even more dangerous, which of course makes them really effective against Vedi. So that's another one where you like wouldn't necessarily want to take that matchup. In your own territory, you have like ways of working around that. And again, you'll eventually get your Thaumaturgy magic to handle elephants no problem with their 6 MR, or even do Charm Animal and take them that way. But that in the very early game, that's still not who you want to look to fight. That's another like turn 20 war.
Yeah, I'd feel better with a bit of magic before going into that.
So I would think that Vadiheim would want to go for Ulm or Phlegra. And of the two, Phlegra becomes more dangerous at that turn 20 mark because that's when they would start getting enough of their communion slaves out under normal circumstances that they'd be able to actually use the full-size elementals. So if you do want to pick a fight with Phlegra, you kind of want to pull the trigger really quickly. Because when they're using their Mouflons and Cyclopes, then your guys are actually really good at fighting into that. And if you're fighting them in the winter before their dominions had a chance to really spread, then like your Rimvedi can be extremely effective against the Cyclopes in particular.
Well,
so I would...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so like I'm probably a little more aggressive, but I would think that if you can either negotiate or otherwise secure your other borders, that it's okay to just attack Phlegra on site. And we know that Phlegra would just die if Vadiheim did that.
Yeah.
But even like a decently sized Phlegra is going to have a really hard time repelling that.
But also, early on, like, if you were considering a war, like, it's late age, so there's a lot of scouts available. We would expect, if a player was looking for an early war target, to have scouted a little bit. And,
and one scout in Phlegra's cap shows this.
Yeah, he's going to say, okay, that might be very appealing as a target.
Yeah, and then since Vadiheim also has ubiquitous stealth, they can also just do an elfing. I mean, in this case, the elfing, so to speak, would be hitting like maybe 2 provinces.
It would just be expanding. He'd just like elf indie provinces, right? It's like
yeah, but what I mean is that he could basically, if he sees this, he can just take the 2 provinces with Phlegra's flags on them, essentially, and just treat it like expansion, because you just don't need that much to take them. And then you back that up by bringing together an actual assault force to take the cap. Like that's a very, I mean, just due to Phlegra's size, it's an incredibly easy matchup. But even if Phlegra expanded like okay, just because Phlegra has a hard time getting troops out early, they have a really hard time repelling a rush if they don't have an awake in this like super early war.
All right. Let's keep going. So Tianqi here has expanded once with this reconstituted army. So this was a move that we predicted that we supported. Let's see if he actually put the archers in front. He didn't. He does lose 1 ancestor cav. Oh, I like this. So he put This is very nice. So he put 3 in a little squad to attack rear the commanders. And
I'm guessing that's why almost nothing died. Yeah, because
yeah.
that's actually a lot of lizards. Yeah, that would have been very lossy if the attack rear hadn't worked.
Yeah. So I still think I think you should have put the archers in front and sacrificed them. But he, in the end, only loses 1 ancestor vessel. So very nicely done. Which gives him, this should be a shaman province, which is absolutely key for Tianchi to have those communion slaves. Unfortunately, what he's done is he's taken. There were some stranded ancestor vessels here, and what we've been saying is that he should either like reinforce to here or like move them here and reinforce to here so he could expand. But what he's done is he's brought them back to his capital. And I guess he's planning to go here with them next.
Yeah.
But which is fine. He's clearing his cap circle, and I guess this keeps on going south. But like, he could already have taken this province or this. Like by now, he could have this army could have been in one of these 2 provinces.
Yeah, and then if you look at like the fact that Ulm is like finally starting to get his act together with expanding, he might lose that Jag province as a result.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's a swamp, so it's not a huge deal, but he's like giving up the initiative when he really doesn't have to.
Yeah. Well, also because I'm sure like this sequence of moves can only mean that he's going to go down here. So that means it's going to be another 3 turns until he even starts to move out to the east. Anyway, so some missed opportunities here, but still a very clean play here, taking on all the lizards. Caelum has done 2 birdings this turn. Yeah.
One of them looks good. The other one looks a little lossy, but
We lost
I'm
one
not
here.
Yeah, I'm guessing that the other one had stuff get caught on the retreat or something.
Let's see. He lost. Yeah, because these were easy indie types. So let's see what happened.
Yeah, because that's a very easy attack rear because the commanders are all isolated. Okay, yep. They get stabbed while they're retreating. That makes sense. The unfortunate fact of using these super light birds.
Exactly. All right, but still plenty of targets, and apparently he has a nap with Bogarus, so presumably these borders have been worked out. So there's kind of no pressure, to go here quickly, which means that Caelum can kind of grab all they want in the west.
Yeah, on their Joman border.
Yeah, as a priority, and grab this last, because presumably this has been negotiated as part of the nap.
Yeah, unfortunately, they straight up lose a province just due to that water being there, and then that also is going to make it more difficult for them to then get that throne, just because since they're missing a province there, it's a little harder to fortify. They're birds, so they can work around it. Like they have incredible logistics just by default, but they definitely were dealt a little bit of a worse hand than some of the other nations.
And it looks like they have started a fort here in this incredibly wealthy province, so good on them.
It's also in strike range of Midgard's cap.
Yep.
It's actually in strike range from either side. Like the cavalry can reach that from the capital.
Yeah.
And so...
Interesting. But you kind of have to, this is such a valuable province.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's a decent place to build up. It's just it's equally easy for Midgard to lock it down as it is for Caelum to use that as a launching point. Having forts up like that next to thrones is also very valuable, though. It means that it's a little easier to reinforce if you are taking that throne, and it's similarly a little easier to deploy to block it if someone else starts taking it.
For sure. Okay, Joman had this army that had moved here. Oh no, I forget if it was here or here last turn, but in any case, he moves northwest with 5 cavalry and 10 Shigeru, and this is just easy indie types.
I'm
And
surprised they
mhm.
haven't built Bakemono Show the way that uh who was it? I'm sorry. The way that the other nation did that was actually
Patala
using them.
has, right?
Patala, thank you.
Hmm.
Um, I'm just because like those are very good troops. They're size 1. They've got Yaris, and Jomon has really good buff magic, so those guys don't drop out of usefulness.
Hmm.
Jomon also doesn't naturally have stealthy troops, so having like a stealthy raiding party, and they are like a really good stealthy raiding party. Like you can get something that can reliably raid 6 PD for only like 240 gold or something.
Hmm.
It's a really good investment, not just to like help your expansion, but like they're also good after the expansion phase just to have around.
Hmm.
So I'm surprised he hasn't started doing that yet. I wonder what he's saving his gold for.
Well, I think he just recently got this province, so
Right, but
but
he hasn't started building them. Is my point. He just
yeah,
got the
yeah.
chief.
Hmm.
I mean, I suspect he's planning on fording it, maybe.
He
Um,
Yeah, he might be just tight on gold. Like he's very small, right? And if he's
that's true.
recruiting, he's got his cap circle cleared, and he's recruiting cavalry and probably everything else into Ashiguru. I don't know, but yeah, hopefully he can free up a bit of gold to start recruiting these. Looks like he's taken another. He's like reconstituting another expansion party to go west here to finish the job. I believe this province is weakened from his earlier attempts. And also,
Yeah,
let's not forget, he was doing assassin expansion a bit, so some of these provinces might be low on commanders, and we don't know about it.
that's true. Yeah. Based on where the assassin was, I suspect that he went to that forest because that's kind of a dead end for him expansion wise.
Hmm.
So that's a pretty like a pretty easy choice because if your assassins can clear it, then that's great, and you just like grab it that way, and it doesn't actually like get in the way of your other expansion parties because they wouldn't have anywhere to go if you were to clear it with a conventional party
Mm-hmm.
anyways.
Well, this it could loop around here, but
Well, it was in the south though. It was in that farm province just south of his cap.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it makes sense for them to go into that forest just to the southwest.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. You mean here? Yes, I get
Yeah.
what you mean. Yeah. All right. Um, Ulm has also been a little bit on the struggle bus. He had his initial army was kind of doing fine, but then he was expanding with like only rangers, and that doesn't work. He has actually, I think these are the first wolves we actually see this entire fight. Now he's gotten a ton
And
of
there's only 4 of them, yeah.
yeah, there's only 4 of him. Now he has the elephant mercenaries. He's got a mage here, personal luck skeleton. The mage may have been just there to like bring reinforcements or something because he's not casting anything useful.
I think that she's there to build a lab.
Oh, could be. Yeah, could be.
Yeah,
This army had to just backtrack because it was a dead end here for expansion. Um,
I I actually think Ulm is basing his like build or build. I don't want to say build order because it's not quite right for Dominions, but his early game strategy off of a Dominions 4 guide. That's honestly what I'm guessing based on
hmm.
what he's doing. Just because in Dom 4 you could expand with just Rangers because ranged units were way more reliable in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the Astral Mages didn't take 2 turns to produce from foreign recruitment, so you could snowball like a huge number of them more easily, and then get like super early magic online. And it looks like he's going for that, and it's still like fine. Like those are still good mages, but you can't expand with just rangers anymore, and the effect of like the number of mages that you get per lab is well, it's half as good, right? So labs, you can basically think of it as labs being twice as expensive if you pursue that playstyle.
Right.
So it's not quite as good of an early investment in terms of like being able to defend yourself and pick an early fight.
And it's going to
And
be
you're
vulnerable to, raiding and bad luck events, because if you're not fording those provinces, that's just sort of exposed infrastructure.
yes, and then based on the fact that he went for like some sort of like late game focused build that doesn't even do vampires, it's gonna take him a while, I think, before
Mm-hmm.
he's like properly able to like utilize his god to do stuff. So he's relying on scales, and when you take a scales build, you need to build a lot of troops. So you do need those early forts up. Let's check if he's forting that farm there though, because that. Pardon me. Oh nope, not yet. Okay. The reason that I thought he might is just because I saw that he had 2 scouts there instead of just the one. Usually, if
Yeah.
you have one sitting still, then he's building a fort.
Okay, so Ulm's still small. Next turn, though, presumably he's going to take 2 provinces. I guess he'll go up here and he'll go somewhere with this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Ulm has time, just because I don't think that any of his neighbors are going to try to fight him early. So he's been given the luxury to build up from a slow start.
True. Yeah. I mean, and he's kind of lucky to be near Phlegra, who struggled early, so he definitely has room to grow still. Okay, Atlantis brings the worm down here to go underwater next turn. And last episode, we talked a bit about where Atlantis goes here, and we thought the best move. We, in the end, decided that going south near Tianchi was the best move, and that's what he decided to do. So it's a pretty beefy province, but Mournfuls, I guess, are also pretty beefy. He does lose 5 of them, but this is a good move, like, sort of map-wise.
Yeah, it's like a 600 gold expansion party, so you kind of have to expect it to be able to beat hard provinces.
Mm-hmm.
If it can't, you're in trouble.
Right. So from here, he can just cut east. That defines really nice borders with Tianchi, and then he has all the time in the world to come back and take care of this. And now he's going to get his little lake here with his awake worm. A fort. Yeah, the fort being constructed here.
That's a good spot for it, actually. Yeah, because while the province itself is low resource, it's drawing resources from 5 provinces, 2 of which are forests. So it'll actually get an okay resource pool, I think. So I think that's fine. It does mean that your early research is going to be a little bit slower compared to forting underwater, just because the land mages are not quite as good at reading books.
Okay. Bogarus this turn has taken 2 provinces with heavy cav and 2 eparchs. It looks like I'm seeing a lab here.
That has to be from an event. Yeah,
so it must have been an event. And this is not like the worst province ever. You could definitely fort this.
I think you do fort that, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's right next to a throne, it's high income, and it's got decent resources because it's a forest instead of a farm.
Actually, Bogarus just has like amazing. Look at this. It's got like a 24k, a 17k. This is a 13k, 13k, 13k. These are, and a 12k. Man, and a 40. Jeez. Not one. He has one 6k province, and every other province that he has is at least like 12, 13k, if not 17. That's amazing.
Yeah, that 6k province is in a great spot to get blood hunted too. So that's what that's going to be.
That's that's pretty good luck, I gotta say.
I think that some of those are large provinces actually. So it's not. Well, I mean, it is luck in terms of his getting that spawn, but also
yeah. I mean, like yeah.
Like those are, because they're large provinces rather than like farms as the reason that their income is so high. That also means that they're going to be relatively site rich as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and looks like more heavy cav coming out, and he hasn't. Has he started to fort this? No, presumably he will. He's got a lot of options for forts, so it's just going to be a matter of gold.
It's interesting that he left the eparchs there. Oh, it's because it's cold, so they can just move north. He doesn't need to recombine them with anything.
Yes, whenever, like, this next party that's going to come out probably goes out east, and then he moves the eparchs up here.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you have to move it west first in order to get around the river, but no, it's cold now. You're fine.
They could probably, like, pre-cheer for 2 turns or whatever, and then...
it already flipped, so they don't need to do any of that. They're ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Raga, the smallest Raga on turn 7 that I think we have ever seen.
7s, oh my god. That expansion party is almost 1,000 gold. It might be more than 1,000
It's
gold,
more than
actually,
1,000,
given
right?
that
They're
the
like,
command...
what, 150 each? How much are these? Zaydens. They're like 140?
But then they also are led by a commander who himself is like 200, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And also, yeah, this is super overkill. Looks like there's 4 more in the capital. So this is just like super conservative expansion, but bordering on the ridiculous. Like this could be 3 parties now.
I mean, it's good if you need to go expand onto someone's capital, but definitely overkill for
Yeah,
the province.
but no, but yes, but you could do that after having taken more provinces. You know,
Oh
like
yeah.
yeah,
No, 100%. I'm just saying, like it's that's roughly the sort of province defense against which you need that many Zayadins.
yeah, yeah. And still hasn't taken the whole cap circle. So okay, so we'll have to see if he gets like another priest or something, so he can get another expansion party going. But
I hope he
it's
knows that he has priests.
yeah, I'm not sure what's
Yeah, he
going
can
on
also
there.
just lead them unblessed if he doesn't, but it's
Yeah. Okay.
decisions to live with. But yeah, Phlegra. Phlegra took another province.
Finally, yeah, and last but not least, Phlegra, uh, losing 3 out of their 4 Mouflon cataphracts, which is really unfortunate for them.
They can reinforce from their cap, though. They're really just clearing their cap circle.
Yeah,
So
they're just getting their cap circle. So
my expectation is that Phlegra will have like 6 provinces on, let's see, turn 10. That's my guess for Phlegra. I think that they're going to be at 1 expansion per turn for quite some time.
So, by the way, like one thing you could do, guys, like in this situation, he's got the mercenary crossbows, and his own little shortbow guys, and then 4 mouflons. So the problem is that no matter what you're fighting, like these guys are going to run ahead, and there's only 4 of them. So, and they're not like super. I mean, they're heavy calf, but they're not like sacreds or particularly fancy heavy calf. So they will get swarmed and surrounded, and you're going to lose them. So how could you avoid that? Well, one thing you can do, first of all, they're not on hold and attack. So just general scripting, you put the heavy cav completely at the back and on hold and attack. And then you have the archers wherever, but you should have the archers up front so they can start shooting right at the beginning because these are melee troops. And then by the time the slow melee walks up to the archers, right before they hit the archers, your heavy cav will have finally caught the distance, and you will engage with the infantry just like around the halfway mark because these spent 2 turns on hold, they weren't moving. So that does a few things. First of all, it makes the fight happen closer, in closer range to your archers, so their precision is much better. See, right now the fight is going to happen all the way over here. But if these guys had been hold, and then they attacked, the fight would have happened here. And then if you start the archers up here, then their precision is going to be much, much higher.
And then the other advantage is that because troops move at different speeds, with independence, you don't
Yeah.
want to be fighting the armored heavy infantry first. You want to let the militia and light infantry run in ahead
Running
and do
ahead.
their higher combat speed. They'll do that, and then they'll rout, and then that way you don't have to fight the heavy infantry for that long before they're routed just from
Yeah.
HP losses on the
You're,
indie side.
you're going to give... Here, if we look at it again, you'll see the longer you wait until you engage the enemy, the longer you give the faster militia time to separate from the rest of the pack and get smashed and rout, and then you can move on to the next pack. So anyway, it's just a small scripting tip. If you have actually, this you should do this in general all the time, but in particular here where you only have like 4 guys and you're trying to conserve them so you can keep expanding. Anyways, so that is it for Phlegra, and that's it for all our nations. Is there anything else we missed in the messages? Doesn't look like it. I think
We
that's
got
it
air
for
gems.
this. We got air gems?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. Good for us. All right. Well, I think that's it. Anything? Any closing thoughts about this turn 7 of expansion?
No, I think that the obvious thing to say is that Bogarus is having an incredible start and is definitely shaping up to be the early threat.
Uh huh. Yeah, Bogarus doing. Yeah, I'd say right now I like Bogarus's position. Honestly, I like Caelum's position. I like Vadiheim's position. Um, I
I like
think
Arco's
Ar-
build, honestly.
I like the
Like,
build. I think it's going to come online he's doing fine, right? He's getting 2 per turn, which as we defined as like success. Um, so I think that's shaping up to be quite nice. Um, and yeah, let's see what happens as the borders kind of finally get fleshed out. And I guess we'll see that in the next episode. So we'll see you guys then. Take care.